During my high school years, I immersed myself in studying to provide everyone with the latest news. In high school where boarding was mandatory, I couldn't watch the news. Now I am self-teaching. Seeing my grandmother with a cane at the classroom door, he intentionally changed into new clothes. Upon seeing me, they eagerly exclaimed, "Let's go pick up your parents." In that moment, the book in my hand dropped to the ground, only a ringing sound resonating through the world. I'm going to see my parents. They're no longer just cold images on the screen. I can throw myself into their arms and act flirtatiously, or hold their hands and sit by their side, displaying my awards from over there. To show them, I grew up in the countryside, excelling in exams annually and questioning if they'll be proud. I rushed to the station with my grandma, cutting my hair several times and quietly getting a wet paper towel to wipe my face. I believe I've done wrong one by one. We all need to take care of our appearance, always regretting not washing my hair before going out. I'm afraid my parents didn't get a good first impression of me, so I shouldn't dislike it. By then, I was in my youth, and my naive self-confidence had already started to grow. I believe my parents ignored me as a child, and when I see them, I need to demonstrate that we are a family despite the challenges we've faced. While my father sat until midnight, his friend came to look for Grandma. He said his father called him, mentioning they had a little bit. I felt we finished the connection and will send it later. I want to return to my hometown, avoiding waiting as per their advice. Stunned by the news, mind reeling, confirming their behavior with contempt. Though Grandma is old and I understand the importance of being filial, I keep disappointing my parents. Maybe they aren't as perfect as I thought, and maybe I'm not as good as they expected. After returning, I had a high fever and visited my uncle during my illness to determine their reason for returning to China. The battlefield they were in was completely destroyed by artillery. I believe the timing was too sudden. He walked a bit slower, and many were injured. My parents are even more determined to remember the time I was bathed initially. Okay. In the end, their photographer friend, who accompanied them through life and death, met the same fate. Burdened with others' lives and expectations, they were even more reluctant to stop. After resting at home, they quickly returned to the war front. The fourth is to express guilt. They suddenly bought new phones for me and Grandma, and even called me first, but we are really unfamiliar. The phone was opened, and after a few polite words, there was silence. Before hanging up, my father urged me to study hard because my parents were waiting, but my focus was elsewhere. The little girl's dad from the microphone adopted the daughter of a colleague, a girl 5 months younger than me who is very pitiful. My parents were young when my mother died. Now, in danger, they keep Su Yaodai by their side. Later, maybe I was very distressed. To ensure Su Yao's happy and safe growth, they returned. I quit journalism, settled in the city, and used years of savings to support my sister, providing her with the best education and family environment. From start to finish, no one remembered the forgotten mother and daughter in the countryside. Gradually, my beautiful thoughts about my parents faded. I stopped anticipating their affection. The journalism major I cherished was removed from my plans. Grandma always likes the baby and reminds her to take care of herself, making Grandma happy when the baby loves herself. I aim to improve myself and help my grandmother live a better life as soon as possible. Failing daily, heading out to buy vegetables for Grandma. He won the puddle at the door, fell down, kept it a secret, lived alone, and promised to cook my favorite braised ribs for me after my monthly vacation. Before the monthly vacation, I saw my parents who returned home for Grandma's funeral. They stood at the headmaster's office door, followed by a girl with a wheat complexion. Once I saw myself, I coldly snorted, "Don't overdo it." He is very confident and expressive, his emotions are clearly visible. Holding my parents, facing the well-dressed middle-aged people, we watched silently as they informed me of my grandma's passing and came to take me home. They will comfort and care for me. At that moment, it seemed to collapse before us. I forgot how I cried. They led me to my grandma's burial site. All I saw was a cold tombstone. He and they comforted me, reassuring me that even though my grandma was gone, they would be there for me, and I would find solace in their presence. Adopted by them, Su Yao made faces at me, and my parents didn't owe you anything. When enduring hardships with my parents, you were clueless. She looked very uneven and muttered a sentence quietly. It was this sentence that completely ignited my anger. Despite my parents' objection, I quickly approached and defeated him. Midway through, my parents attempted to split us up unsuccessfully, until Su Yao was suddenly given a haircut by me. Her scream pierced the silent cemetery, landing on the ground with a loud slap, revealing her once praised ladle-like cheek. I am amazed by the sight of his face reflected in my red, swollen cheeks, with a desire to reach out to me in retrospect. I gaze at myself. Grandma's warm smile in the black and white photo made me realize I was truly alone in this world. Got my parents back, but they now have another daughter, and they'll compensate for all the guilt they felt towards me through her. In the end, they hurt me for him. Stop expecting or loving them. Love yourself from now on. In the dream, an old, familiar voice speaks gently. He said they don't understand and will regret losing the best baby. I gazed at my eyes, tears slipped from the corners. When I woke up, I just felt empty. I was calmer than anyone else when all the emotions from longing for my parents' love disappeared. Surprised to see me awake, the nurse sister in the next bed finally woke up after 4 days. He mentioned calling my parents, then returned later to embarrass me. Your mother was there just now. There must be something urgent at this moment preventing me from reaching him. He will come later. I am aware of the situation. Today is Fu Yao's parent-teacher meeting. We felt content and relaxed after the 3rd year of high school. In my last diagnostic test, I achieved first place instead of Su Yao, who usually holds it. Du Yao pointed out that even if I come first, my mother won't overlook anything, so we're going to Shake's parent-teacher meeting. I was dissatisfied for a while in my heart. He had contempt for climbing mountains, but now I realize it was just unnecessary disputes. Parents' love is illusory, but knowledge is real. I have the name I want, no need to compare with Su Yao. In the evening, my mother finally came. I accessed his cell phone 30 minutes ago, and he rushed in with a cake in hand. Though he felt some guilt and shame, my mother's face showed relief when the nurse informed him I had left the hospital. The more attention they give me, the more they discover my strengths. I excel in academics, am proactive, enjoy helping classmates, and have a good reputation in the community. I love cleanliness and maintain a tidy and bright home. I also cook tasty dishes and am skilled in knitting and gardening. In the countryside, I learned from my grandma how to improve my life, amazing and joyous. So to them, my reserve seemed like composure, and dullness seemed like seriousness. All the time, my mom's eyes lit up with surprise as she looked at the heavy album in my hand. This album contains moments captured by the print media while he was a journalist. The photos are carefully cut out and placed under layers of yellowing plastic protection to ensure they are preserved in the album even if lost during their return home. Xiaoying, these were all collected by your parents. His mother's choked voice touched him as he reached out to hug me, but I surprised her by sidestepping. With tears wiped away, her eyes sparkled, seeing my actions as attention-seeking tactics of a love-deprived child. She excitedly turned to Dad to share the surprise she unintentionally found, ready for them, but he didn't know this was the album I planned to discard. 3 days later, he and his dad spotted the album at the waste station near the community entrance. When she angrily approached me with the album, I calmly replied. Originally it was to be thrown directly. The one in the trash can was picked up and will be thrown further next time. A sentence completely ignited his long-suppressed anger. After a year, he raised his hand again, but Dad promptly stopped him. We went out, with Dad comforting Mom's emotions. When he left, I ignored him and went back to the room to continue memorizing English words, unaware of their discussion. Since then, they focused more on me, which upset Su Yao. He stirred up trouble in order to get his father's attention back. His performance is not very good, causing a gradual decline in his own grades. Indeed, he's quite intelligent, but previously, he needed coaxing from his parents for studying. Presently, he's easily distracted. Can't just go back directly, can you? 3 months prior to the college entrance exam, father observed his decline. That day, Su Yao cried on the way home from school. His head teacher asked my mother to come to school for a talk about my current situation. In the past, my mother used to receive honors for not having parents come to school, being tamed like this for the first time. Losing face himself, he couldn't resist mentioning me. As for how Su Yao, once clueless, could cry like a nightingale, worrying people from the start, and cry without pause. My mom panicked and had to bring him back. Once home, Su Yao hurried into my room and, like Su, tossed my things on the floor. Upon returning home, I was met with a chaotic scene. Just as Su Yao's emotions flared up again, Dad, Mom, and I were fighting for survival in a rain of bullets while you walked away to take care of yourself, unaware of his whereabouts. Why should you enjoy good fortune all the time? She glared at me and yelled. He was like a lion, fiercely driving away intruders. Su Yao's parents looked at him, turned their pleading eyes to me. What are they begging me for? Hoping I would speak some soft words, whether flattering or expecting submission, acknowledging my outsider status in this family. Looking at my parents still trying to shift blame, I couldn't help but chuckle from my heart. Yes, only those who abandon family for self-indulgence are unworthy of love. Without a word, I stepped over the mess, picked up some clothes, tidied up a bit, then headed towards the door. Xiaoying, where are you going? My mother shouted behind. I'll be at the dormitory. This time, I did not look back again. I said, what Fu Yao said is right. This has never been my home, and my parents are not really my parents, so I have no reason to stay here. What do you mean by that? Dad, quiet until then, suddenly raised his voice, but I ignored him and swiftly left. Mom, walking behind Xiaoying, spoke to me for the first time with a trembling voice, sensing as well. After this departure, I feel no more connection. Appearing afraid to hear my response, he abruptly raised his voice, preventing me from speaking. I understand your grievances about feeling neglected by mom and dad in the past, but they have acknowledged their mistakes and are making changes. Whether Yao Yao or you, both still mom and dad's daughters, why not live peacefully? No. I firmly stated that you have favored Su Yao's greed by showing favoritism to your two daughters. With parents around, we can never live peacefully. Her face drained of color upon hearing those words. It was the first time he heard such direct and sharp words from me. He looked like he wanted to respond, but I cut him off. I said if given a choice, I prefer not to be your daughter anymore. It's better for you to just have Su Yao as your daughter. After that, without waiting for her reply, I turned and left immediately. This time I briskly walked away. The love I yearned for 17 years in the lonely and oppressive time once bound me like shackles,